Temperatures continue to reach record highs in southern Europe and other parts of the world as experts warn of new normals. Russia has launched missile attacks on 2 Ukrainian port cities in what it says is revenge for the Crimea bridge strike.
The war in Ukraine plagues an EU summit with Latin America as a final statement fails to condemn Russian aggression in the conflict.
An American soldier is arrested in North Korea after crossing the border with the South without authorization. Vinegar extends his advantage over rival Pogacar and has a second straight Tour de France victory in sight.
Southern Europe is baking under a merciless sun that blinds during the day and barely cools off at night. In Spain, thermometers exceed 30 degrees in the early morning and 40 degrees at midday. Heat waves now last longer and people no longer know how to keep cool.
Es complicado porque no te puedes defender contra el calor. Contra el frío te abrigas, contra el calor es que no hay manera.
Several Spanish regions are on alert for extreme temperatures. The El Niño phenomenon is partly to blame, although it is not the only factor.
The global temperatures are now warmer than they were than the El Niños back in the 1980s. So the global trend is continuing to grow. So I don't know that we can actually talk about normals because it will keep changing. It will just keep getting warmer.
In the meantime, Italy is sweltering under the African anticyclone dubbed Charon that has put a score of cities, including Rome, on red alert. The World Meteorological Organization says Europe could break its record high temperature of 48.8 degrees Celsius recorded in Sicily in 2021. But the heat wave is not limited to Europe. North America and North Asia are also registering abnormally high temperatures. In Tokyo, temperatures this week exceeded 37 degrees Celsius.
Wildfires in Greece, which began on Monday, were continuing to burn on Tuesday afternoon. The blaze in Attica had spread from Venetoria to Mandra Attica. By mid-afternoon, a fire had broken out on Mount Egaleo, with 3 helicopters rushing to put it out. Evacuation orders have been issued for at least 6 seaside communities as major fires edged closer to summer resort towns and gusts of wind hit 70 kilometers an hour. Earlier, 3 volunteer firefighters in Serenida were hospitalized after sustaining eye injuries, and officials say homes have been destroyed in both Serenida and Loutraki. The fire reignited in Loutraki with the biggest problem in Agios, Charalambos and Panorama, with the firefighters trying to bring the flames under control. 7 aircraft, including 2 helicopters, are operating at the scene. Greater Athens and much of southern Greece were on the second highest level of alert for wildfires on Monday and Tuesday, following a 4-day heat wave which had eased over the weekend. Temperatures are expected to soar again later in the week.
These are images of what Moscow has described as a massive revenge attack for Monday's strike on the Kerch Bridge linking Russia with Crimea. Russia launched its drones against 2 Ukrainian port cities, Odessa and Mykolaiv, from which cargo ships full of grain leave for distant countries. Ukraine claims that 6 missiles and 21 drones were shot down in the Odessa region, although the debris damaged several homes and part of the port, leaving at least 1 injured. Russia, for its part, says that all the objectives were hit, including several fuel depots in Mykolaiv used by the Ukrainian army. Meanwhile, the queues of Russian tourists who want to enter or leave the Crimean Peninsula continue on the damaged Kerch Bridge. Immediately after the attack, which Moscow blames on Kiev, Russia announced the suspension of the agreement on Ukrainian grain exports. This Tuesday, the Kremlin warned Ukraine that it would be risky to continue sending grain without security guarantees from Russia.
Despite the promise of investment and the signature of several deals, the war in Ukraine has plagued a summit between the EU and Latin American and Caribbean countries. Just one single state, Nicaragua, failed to agree with the final declaration of the meeting because it includes a reference to the war in Ukraine. The text, however, due to varying sensitivities on both sides of the Atlantic, has been watered down and doesn't condemn Russian aggression.
Welcome to our press conference following...
Nous sommes extrêmement satisfaits d'avoir pu dégager une position très forte de 60 pays. 60 pays autour de la table, Union européenne et CELAC. Et j'ai simplement noté avec mon collègue qui était le coprésident pour ce sommet, Ralph Gonzalez, que seulement un pays n'a pas pu marquer son accord en raison d'un paragraphe.
The other controversial topic was about how to refer to the historical transatlantic slave trade. The solution, a paragraph acknowledging and regretting the untold suffering inflicted on millions of people. However, with no commitment on reparations. But the summit served above all to relaunch trade ties between the two sides. The European Commission has also pledged €45 billion in investment projects that cover the green energy sector, among others. And several agreements have been signed, including one with Chile establishing a partnership on much-needed critical raw materials.
Es la primera vez que pudimos discutir y hablar con toda claridad un mecanismo para terminar con el extractivismo en América Latina. Esta idea de que América Latina es solo proveedora de producción primaria y pareciera que siempre fue impedida de industrializar esa producción primaria. Y es la primera vez que con todas las letras pudimos hablar del extractivismo sin culpas. Medio en broma, medio en serio. Digo, demandó 5 siglos, pero finalmente lo conseguimos.
The EU is trying to counterbalance the growing influence of China in the region, as the Asian giant has managed to become Latin America's second major trade partner behind the US and ahead of the EU.
In which waters does the new British immigration law navigate? Not in those of international legality. According to the United Nations, coinciding with the arrival in Dorset on Tuesday of a giant boat intended to accommodate 500 asylum seekers, the UN Commissioner for Human Rights says a new law passed by MPs on Monday is contrary to the UK's obligations under international human rights and refugee law, and warns that it will have profound consequences for people in need of international protection. It also includes measures to transfer irregular arrivals to what they say are safe third countries. Under the legislation, anyone reaching the country illegally by boat will be refused the right to apply for asylum in the UK. Both the boat and the bill are part of Prime Minister Rishi Sunak's strategy to prevent migrants from reaching Britain in small boats across the English Channel. In 2022, more than 45,000 people made the crossing, and several lost their lives in the attempt.
An American soldier has been arrested in North Korea after crossing the country's heavily fortified border with South Korea. The man is said to have been on a tour to the Korean border village of Panmunjom and crossed into the north without authorization. He's believed to be held in North Korean custody, and the UN command is working with North Korean officials to resolve the incident. It comes amid increased tension between North Korea and the United States, who deployed a nuclear-armed submarine to South Korea on Tuesday for the first time in 4 decades. Allies have warned North Korea that any use of nuclear weapons in combat would result in the end of its regime. However, periodic visits by US nuclear submarines to South Korea were among several agreements reached by the two countries in April in response to North Korea's expanding nuclear threat. Defending champion Jonas Vingegaard could have time-trialled his way to a second straight Tour de France victory. On Tuesday, he extended his advantage over two-time winner Tadej Pogačar to nearly 2 minutes, with just 5 stages remaining. Vingegaard started the day only 10 seconds ahead of Pogačar, but when it came down to a direct head-to-head battle, Vingegaard was in a class of his own. 26-year-old Vingegaard now leads Pogačar by 1:48 overall, and it will take something spectacular from the Slovenian cyclist to take the yellow jersey. Adam Yates moved into third overall, almost 9 minutes behind Vinigo. New Wimbledon champion Carlos Alcaraz returned to his home city of Murcia on Monday evening after his epic final win over Novak Djokovic. The 20-year-old becomes the third youngest Wimbledon champion in the Open era and adds a second major title to his resume after winning the US Open last year. Shortly before, in an interview, he explained that he was still coming to terms with everything.
Todavía no me he parado a asimilar, a hablar con mi familia, con mi equipo de todo lo que ha pasado, lo que ha ocurrido, pero la verdad que aún así muy emocionante. En mi cabeza tengo el match ball todavía, de esa derecha cruzada, deslizando Djokovic, la tira a la red, hago la croqueta, ha sido un momento mágico que lo voy a tener en mi cabecera durante muchísimo tiempo.
Alcaraz was then asked whether he was aware of making history in tennis.
Puede ser que la historia haya cambiado un poco, pero yo creo no me lo tomo así, porque mientras estén Rafa, Djokovic ahí, van a ser los referentes para todo el mundo, van a ser leyendas. En el futuro, una vez que no estén, que espero que sea dentro de mucho tiempo, ya hablaremos de las nuevas generaciones, de la nueva era, pero yo creo que ahora mismo todavía hay que disfrutar de Djokovic y de Rafa todo lo que podamos.